listening to Blue Jays Nation Radio with Cam Lewis and Tyler Yaremchuk, a member of the Nation network of podcasts and delivered by DoorDash.
We are officially in September, Coombsy.
The dog days of summer are over. Crunch time is here.
Title of the podcast.
Dog days gone.
Crunch time here. Welcome into episode 107. As always, brought to you by our friends at DoorDash. Promo code BJNPodDD gets first-time users of the app 25% off and no delivery fees. You have no time to cook because the next 30-some days of your life are going to be about scoreboard watching.
Yeah, exactly. You're going to be keying into what the Tampa Bay Rays are doing, what the Baltimore Orioles are doing, what the Seattle Mariners are doing, what the Minnesota Twins are doing, what the Cleveland Guardians are doing. There's a lot to pay attention to. I would say the wild card race is messy.
It is incredibly messy. Get ready. Find all of those illegal streaming sites you need to make sure you don't miss a second of Baltimore Orioles or Tampa Bay Rays action. Prepare to load up your computer with viruses watching baseball.
We are not saying that you should use these websites.
That's a joke.
We are saying that you should watch legally on your Rogers package. Rogers, please don't sue us. I'm sorry.
MLB TV.
MLB.TV. Like that. Yeah, that's easy.
Anyways, this is going a bunch of really weird ways, but the point is the Jays are right in the thick of a playoff race, and they are pretty close to being on the outside looking in. On one hand, you could go, hey, you know, they're right around there with Tampa Bay and Seattle. On the other hand, they're only 2 games up on the Baltimore Orioles. They could very easily, within one bad stretch of games, be on the outside looking in. Scale of 1 to 10. Let's just start with this before we even go and look at the Chicago Cubs series. 1 to 10, how confident are you this team will make the playoffs?
Well, it's kind of a glass half full or glass half empty approach you have to take. And it's that at this point, we're entering the final month of the season and there's 70 and 59, which is probably not quite as good as we thought they were going to be, but they're in a fine spot. Right now, they control their own destiny. They're in a playoff spot. They're in the third wildcard spot, so they wouldn't host a playoff series if it were to begin right now. But if they simply just do better than the teams behind them, and they're going to be playing these teams, namely Baltimore, a lot down the stretch, the Jays control their own destiny. So I think that's positive. At least last year, what happened was the first half was difficult and then they had a lot of ground to make up later. Their hot streak nearly got them to it, but it wasn't enough. This year now, they've done enough earlier in the season to put themselves in a situation where they're a playoff team. But now we're going to find out, okay, are you going to be the first wildcard team? Are you going to be the third, second, or are you going to blow this thing and lose out to the Baltimore Orioles? So on a scale of 1 to 10, how worried am I? I'm kind of in the middle. There's reasons to believe and there's reasons to be doubtful. I think there's validity on both sides, but I think the Jays are a pretty good team. I think they're pretty good. I think they are good enough to do it. But again, baseball is a weird sport and this team's been wildly inconsistent. Every piece of this lineup has been wildly inconsistent, whether it's the starting pitching and someone like Jose Barrios, whether it's the depth pieces in their lineup or even the stars. When you kind of look at how Vladimir Guerrero Jr.'s season has gone, certainly not as productive as it was last year. I think we expected him to take a bit of a step back, but I don't think I expected that step back to be as frustrating as it's been. Bo Bichette, plenty of reasons to be, frustrated with his roller coaster season. George Springer barely staying in the lineup. Like this next month, they could flip a switch because you never know when a hot streak's going to start. They could flip a switch, win 9 of their next 10, and we're sitting there laughing because they're back in the top wildcard spot and everything seems fine. They could go through this next stretch, lose 3 or 4 to the Orioles, only take 1 or 2 against the Pirates, and you're sitting there going, fuck, they're going to miss the playoffs. So it's going to be really, really intriguing. They did get 2 wins from the Chicago Cubs, so let's get into the 3 up, 3 down for that series. Starting with the first game. And if you're going to go on a run and make the playoffs and maybe go on a playoff run, you're going to need unexpected heroes. The Blue Jays got that in the series opener as Danny Jansen hits a huge 3-run bomb that gets them back into that ball game. And then he comes through with the walk-off hit in extra innings. A guy who at points this season, when he wasn't healthy, we speculated if he even had a spot on the Jays when he was healthy. Him getting hot there, him having that big game, hopefully that's a sign of things to come, I guess. Yeah, the Jays just need players to get hot right now. It doesn't matter who it is. I mean, ideally, everyone gets hot and goes nuclear at the exact same time. Yeah. That'd be great. But just in situations like this where you have a kind of a limp energy against the Cubs, you've just been swept by the Angels. You're not feeling good. You're down 4-0 in the 7th inning against Chicago. You're like, oh, geez, this is another team we should beat. It's easy to dwell and get negative, but then all of a sudden, Danny Jansen comes out of nowhere, hits a 3-run bomb, makes it 4-3 in the bottom of the 7th. They tie the game the following inning, and then they damn near wind up blowing this thing. This was a weird seesaw back and forth affair. And the nice thing for the Jays is that they played a good fundamental defensive game in the first 9 innings. Things got a little bit weird in the extra innings, which does tend to happen. Extra innings always feel chaotic with the runner on second. Everything's always a bit of a clusterfuck there. But they played a good fundamental game before that, and then they got the clutch home run. So it was kind of a nice way to come out of that terrible Anaheim series. Just get like some good vibes. It just felt like if they had lost that first game, it would have been a real doom and gloom downer atmosphere, especially again after the LA series. So just the fact that somebody came up, Danny Jansen, whoever it is, it's great to get that. You need that so badly down the stretch because it can't ever just be one guy, right?
No. And it can't be. And the next game 2 of the series, this is our second up. It was a different hero. We sat here recording the series preview for this one, and we were like, oh, when the lineup comes out for game 1, is Teoscar going to be there? John Schneider benches him, doesn't play him. We dissected the lack of hustle play, I guess you'd call it, at the end of that Angels series. They put him back in the lineup for game 2, and Teoscar, makes up for it to an extent. They're down 2-1, bottom of the 6th. He hits a big 3-run bomb. I love that play, but I also love the sliding catch he made in right field. Again, that was a hustle play. That's what you want to see from Teoscar right now. But the 3-run bomb and him playing hero in game 2 is our second up.
Yeah, that's kind of what the Jays have to do at this point. And that's what we kind of thought we were getting when John Schneider took over as manager from Charlie Montoyo was, all right, we have John Schneider now. He's more of an old school manager. He's going to hold guys accountable. It's not going to be Charlie Montoyo's chill vibe. Everyone's having a good time. Everyone's relaxed. Wears the t-shirt, everything's fine. No need to worry. No, it's going to be a completely different thing. If someone's dogging it or something's wrong, then they're going to take a seat the next day. And with Teoscar, it's hard to say, he fouled the ball off of his foot. He might've had a sore foot, and that's why he jogged slowly into second base against Anaheim. But even then, if his foot's that bad, then he really shouldn't be playing, especially when they're at home on the turf. Yeah. So this is the accountability we have to see down the stretch in September, because there's no room for error. If someone's not playing their best, they don't seem focused, they don't seem locked in, or they seem like they're just not getting the job done, then you have to put somebody else in there and give somebody else the chance to be the hot hand. For Teoscar, it seems like it woke him up. He made a fantastic defensive play, like you mentioned, and then he hits the bomb. That's exactly what the team needs. It's a nice shot for Teoscar to get his confidence back. It's not like he has to sit for a week and feel shitty about himself and everyone's got to point fingers at him. No, he's not the single reason the team's inconsistent, but he is a reason the team is inconsistent at times. So sit him down and then have him come in the next day with a new effort. And that's exactly what happened.
The third up we have is all about the bullpen, and they had to use their bullpen for, just based on my rough count, 11 innings in this series, I believe. And the only reliever who gave up a run was David Phelps. That is really, really encouraging for this team. Their bullpen is a storyline that seemingly hasn't gone away for the last 2 seasons now. A lot of talk that, they didn't do enough at the deadline. Anthony Bass wasn't going to be enough. I think you could, maybe still make that argument, but Bass looked good. Meza came in a tough spot, got him out of the jam. Simber got him out of a jam. Romano, Garcia pitched well. It seems like they now have sort of a stable core at least. And maybe, again, you'd love one more high-end kind of arm, but the stable core is there for this group.
Yeah, we're no longer in a situation where it's difficult to find someone to pitch. Even in the situation where Trevor Richards has to come into a high leverage spot in the second game because the bullpen's a little more exhausted from the extra inning games the night before. Trevor Richards, who's he's going to be 7th, 8th on their depth chart, ahead of probably only Yusei Kikuchi at this point. Yeah, that's where he is in their depth chart. Even then, you can throw technically your weakest reliever in, and he strikes a guy out, and it's fine. And there's a lot of depth there. And then also in the minor leagues, you have Zach Pop still in AAA. You have Julian Merriweather in his rehab assignment waiting to come up. There's actual depth now. Yeah, there's ways to get through a game when your starter only goes 5 innings. It's not like a huge point of concern. I don't think that down the stretch, the thing that's going to derail this team is going to be the bullpen. That's not how I'm feeling going into September.
Yeah. And I think that's a totally fair take. The one guy who you would maybe knock on a little is David Phelps in the bullpen. But the interesting thing about his season, month of May, he pitches 10 1/3, has a 1.74 ERA. very good numbers. Month of June, craters, 12 innings, 4.5 ERA. Not a good month. July, tremendous month, 9 2/3, ERA of 0. Doesn't allow an earned run in 9 2/3. Amazing. August, not good. 12 innings, 4.5 ERA, 4 straight outings to end the month where he gives up a run. So if that pattern continues, David Phelps is going to have a great September. Do you think David Phelps is going to have a great September though? Or is this a scenario where maybe you look at bringing up Zach Pop? Maybe you look at Julian Merriweather?
Yeah, I think it's just the hot hand at this point. It's the roster's expanded now to 28 guys. Yep. You have Phelps, who hasn't been pitching stupendously well lately. Like you said, he's been back and forth. And obviously these are pretty random sample sizes just because, he's been month to month doesn't mean he's going to pitch well in September. Yeah. So with a guy like Phelps, if he's not getting the job done, then, you have 2 arms down there in AAA who can come up. Yeah. There was talk in the past when Trevor Richards was struggling. It was like, oh, geez, maybe they should DFA this guy to make room for Merriweather. But the thing with Richards is he has multiple years of control and he's shown in the past to be quite a good reliever. So you have some patience there. With Phelps, it's like, this guy's on a 1-year deal. He's going to be a free agent at the end of the year. If you have to,
probably not bringing him back.
Yeah. I mean, if you are, you're not, who cares? Like, it's a depth veteran reliever. It's not the end of the world. Like, if he's not getting the job done, then you have other guys to come up and get the job done. That's just where we're at. If you're pitching well, you're going to continue to pitch. If you're not, then they're going to find somebody else.
It's got to be short leash time in September, right? And I just look at Phelps, 4 straight outings where you've given up a run. Maybe that's an instance where you need to mix things up a little bit. But the main point of this conversation was that the bullpen was actually very good against the Cubs. And if the bullpen wasn't good against the Cubs, we're certainly not sitting here talking about winning 2 or 3 against them. No. And boy, wouldn't have that been an embarrassment.
Yeah. I mean, if it wasn't for the performance of the bullpen put up here, I mean, in game 1, they came all the way back and they damn near blew it. Jimmy Garcia had a fantastic performance, also aided by a very good play from Bo Bichette at second base, the double play, though there was a little bit of luck on that one. And then in the second game too, it was a ton of effort from the relievers, and you don't get that, then you've all of a sudden lost that game too. So the Jays are getting fine pitching from their bullpen. They now need the bats to show up and get hot.
Yep, they certainly do. Moving into into the downside of this conversation, David Phelps, I think we can kind of pencil in as, I guess, 1 if we want to be cheap with it. Mitch White did not have a great start, and it's now back-to-back starts that haven't really been that good for Mitch White. 13 earned runs over his last 9 2/3 innings pitched between the starts against LA and Chicago. Concern?
Weird. It's strange. It's strange because when he came in, he looked good.
And I like his stuff still.
Yeah. I mean, it's all still there. I mean, like the makings of a solid back-end pitcher are all still there. We all saw it in his first 2 outings. It was like, you know what? This guy can pound the strike zone. He throws pitches that move. Like, there's a decent starter there, but then also you got to remember this is a number 5 starter, and sometimes number 5 starters aren't particularly good. Yeah. But the reality is, even in a terrible outing, the third game against the Cubs there, he still goes 4 2/3, allows 6. Obviously, you're not giving the team a chance to win, but we're not talking about a Yusei Kikuchi meltdown where he goes 2 innings and he completely fucks the bullpen.
At least he's eating them up.
Yeah, right. So at least there's that. But that being said, when you toss White out there again and it's a 3rd bad start in a row, then you kind of have to ask yourself the question as to what's the plan moving forward. Are we going to keep using this guy? Should he be a multi-innings bullpen guy? Who's the next guy in line per se?
Casey Lawrence got called up as part of the roster is expanding.
Yeah, that's a tough one. If that's your next guy in line, then yeah. So I mean, unfortunately, like we talked about this in the last pod the contingency options are Lawrence and Thomas Hatch, who were terrible when they came up, or Kikuchi, who, as we know, cannot throw a strike. So it might just be Mitch White goes out and you just plan accordingly. You plan that, all right, maybe this is the day that we need a long arm in the pen to be up and ready.
Third down is just going to be, not finding a way to get the sweep against this Cubs team. And it was a very sweepable series. But I mean, they scored 5 runs in the last game, thanks to a couple of dingers, Biggio and Kirk. But other than that, like the offense just didn't get going. And it was a bullpen day by the Chicago Cubs, who don't have a good bullpen. And that just leaves a bad taste in my mouth that even though Mitch White didn't have a great start, allowed the 6 earned runs, you still didn't find a way to beat the Cubs when they had a bullpen day. And that just doesn't sit right with me.
Yeah, it wasn't ideal. You would have liked to have seen the Jays put up a little bit more offense than that, really throughout the entire series, all told. I mean, pretty much a lot of the offense in this series was home runs. It was Danny Jansen's home run in the first game. It was Teoscar's home run in the second game. And then in the third game, there was 2 separate home runs. And I mean, we all know the Jays are a home run offense. That's who they are, but it's not the best thing to not see them putting together rallies against a shitty team like the Cubs. You know, you'd love to see just the Jays pop off with a couple of huge innings, maybe one where they draw a couple walks and then hit a double and then hit a single, that kind of thing, where they're really stringing hits together. It doesn't seem like that's where they are right now. The lineup is very far from hot. They had guys come through with big hits, which is great, but right now they're not clicking, and they have to start clicking when they're playing Baltimore and Tampa in September.
Yeah, because I don't think in those series you can just go into it and be like, hey, I hope we get a big dinger here or there or whatever, right? Like having a home run heavy offense naturally leads to being feast or famine at points. But I think the Jays need to show that they also have the ability to get a rally going, send 6 or 7 guys to the plate when you score 3 or 4 runs and things like that. It's just going to make it a little bit more sustainable, and they'll certainly need that throughout the month of September. I want to transition this into a conversation about what Ross Atkins and Mark Shapiro had to say earlier this week. Do you read anything? What kind of feeling do you get? Maybe is my question. These two coming out and doing a bit of a media tour. The timing of it. Yeah,
the timing of it seemed weird to me. So Atkins comes out after they get swept by Anaheim, and he's kind of talking, you know, let's focus on the big picture here. Let's remember it's the dog days of August. There's burnout. There's fatigue. These are not Atkins's words. I'm paraphrasing essentially what he talked about. And he's like, hey, look, remember that behind the scenes, you're not seeing everything that goes into the day-to-day prep. And what he's basically doing here is coming out and defending guys like Bo or Teoscar or whoever that get kind of the ire of the fans, where we're being like, oh, this guy doesn't pay attention enough. He doesn't try hard enough. He doesn't want to win. He cares about himself, blah, blah, blah. Lots of fans will say shit like that. So Atkins is coming out and kind of trying to defend that. But what his quote kind of ultimately showed was, hey, fans, you can't be mad at the players, which isn't really the ideal message to send. So then after Atkins does that on Monday, Shapiro has to come out shortly after that and talk himself, in which he just straight up admitted the season has been up and down and kind of strange, but he's also saying, hey, look, you got to believe in the talent in this room.
Yeah. His direct quote was, it's been an up and down season, certainly one that's one of the more strange ones that I've observed. But at the same time, I know, having the privilege to have a front row seat, you can have a group of guys that care more, work harder, or are better teammates and have talent. That quote there feels like, you know, he's really addressing the yelling at Vlad, Teoscar not hustling. Like, that is a pretty blatant defense of those incidents. And I find it interesting that Shapiro felt the need to come out and say that, because when someone in his role does, I don't know, if there was really nothing there, you almost just don't feel the need to come out and say anything is kind of what I'm getting at here.
That's what I thought too. It's usually you won't hear from managers too much after the trade deadline's passed. You know, it's kind of like you'll hear from Ross Atkins at the beginning of the year, and then a month in how the team's doing, and then deadline's approaching. So he's talking a bunch. Maybe Shapiro will come out after the trade deadline and be like, oh, we did this. Here's what our plan was, blah, blah, blah. But it's been a month since the trade deadline. And both of them separately come out to talk about how great things are behind the scenes. And it doesn't take much to read into it and look in and think, okay, it seems like something's a little bit weird and they're trying to get out in front of it. That's kind of what it seems.
What's that drill tweet or whatever when it's like, don't tell the media I'm mad.
Don't tell the newspapers I'm mad. I'm not mad. Don't tell the newspapers I'm mad.
That's kind of what this, like, hey, no one better be writing that there's problems behind the scenes, because there's definitely not problems behind the scenes, you guys.
Yeah. Or that's one weird. That's like, my t-shirt that says there's no problems behind the scenes is generating a lot of questions about the problems behind the scenes, which I mean, who knows?
I think we're also just kind of like very loosely speculating on things. Obviously, this may have just been Atkins and Shapiro being like, hey, we should get some positive quotes out there in the media. So let's just go do this and just quiet down this conversation a little bit. And there probably isn't major beefs behind the scenes, but I think you could imagine the point I'm making here is that there's probably some tension in that clubhouse right now.
Probably.
When you get swept by the Angels and you go into a run of games against LA and Chicago where you go, we should be winning a ton here, and you only win 2 of those 5 games, and now your spot in the playoffs is very much in jeopardy. I don't think there's a lot of smiling going on in that clubhouse.
No, and I also don't think, like you mentioned the Bo and Vlad thing, the Bo shouting at Vlad on the bench. I don't think that's necessarily the end of the world. These guys have known each other for a very long time. They've played together. They won a championship together down in the minors. Yeah. I mean, these guys know each other. If that's Bo's way of venting his frustration with himself, or if that's his way of motivating a teammate, or if that's just, whatever it is for him, they know each other better than any of us do seeing from TV. So I don't think we can sit here and be like, oh, there's a huge rift between Bo and Vlad. And even if there is, I don't know if it really matters that much. I don't think the guys on the 2015 team were all best friends.
I'm pretty sure they weren't.
No, I don't think it really matters all that much. If you have two guys who are a little bit competitive and a little bit edgy with each other on your roster, I really don't think it's the end of the world. And that's just speculation.
I think that's totally
just speculation. There might be no beef here. Who knows?
Let's take a look at what else was going on around the American League. Coombsy, the Yankees lost 2 of 3 to the LA Angels.
They're unstoppable, man. The Angels are, yeah.
This honestly would feel like quite an Angels thing to do, would be for them to play like 700 baseball in September and then obviously still miss the playoffs by like 9 games, but sit there and be like, just didn't piece it together at the right moment.
Yeah, to be like the Leafs with the JSO band season that one year.
Yeah.
What was that, 2005-06?
So the Yankees lost 2 of 3. They're off to Tampa now. That is like,
that's interesting.
This weekend could line up very, very well for the Toronto Blue Jays. I think the hope is you take care of business against the Pittsburgh Pirates. We'll get to that in a second, but one of Tampa or New York sweep that series.
Who would you rather see? Who do you care about catching? I care about Tampa personally.
I care more about Tampa. If you sweep Pittsburgh, Tampa gets swept by New York, you're sitting here a game up on Tampa all of a sudden. That would be fantastic.
That's fantastic, yeah.
If the reverse happens, you sweep Pittsburgh and Tampa sweeps New York, then you're 5 games back in the New York Yankees with a month to play and some head-to-head games still. It's not the worst spot to be in.
Because they play the Yankees 3 more times. I think it's just 3 more times, but they play Tampa 5 more times. So
9 more times.
Wait, 9?
They play
it's the Orioles 10 and Tampa 9, right? That's what it is. And then it's Red Sox and Yankees 3 each.
Yeah,
I think. Okay.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Like there's a part of me that says if you're going to catch the Rays, you're going to do it on the back of those head-to-head games. You're going to have 9 games against them and you're going to go 6-3. You're going to gain your 3 games on them and then just kind of be even with them the rest of the way. That's probably your path to catching the Rays. You're likely not catching the Yankees, but this at least provides you a little bit of a chance, a weekend where you're playing a garbage franchise in Pittsburgh and the Yankees, who are not playing well, still get the Rays. That's interesting.
But also my mind is wandering and it's being like the Yankees collapsing is funny.
Yeah, I know, right? It'd be great to see.
Even if it's the Rays winning the division, it's funny.
Yeah. The Rays this week, they swept a 2-game series with the Marlins. So they're still, quite a ways, or they're 6 games back of the Yankees. Jays are 8. The other series we were keeping an eye on, the Mariners got 2 wins against Detroit. They won today, actually.
They won today? Okay.
Yeah, so a 3-game sweep for the Mariners over the Tigers. Cool. There's a team that's taking care of business and beating the shit out of bad teams, right? That
must be nice.
Yeah. Hey, what does that feel like? The Orioles split 2 to start their series. They haven't started game 3, but they got Shane Bieber on the bump. Cleveland has Shane Bieber on the bump. So that might be a tough one for the Orioles today, taking on the Guardians. Baltimore right now sits 2 back. So they're either 2.5 or 1.5 back heading into the weekend. They called up though, top prospect.
Yeah.
And did you see his first dinger?
Yeah.
That was unbelievable. Gunnar Henderson, 21 years old, considered the top by many to be the top prospect in baseball, hits his first career home run, swings so hard his helmet comes off, and with his flowing blonde hair is rounding the bases with no bucket. That was cool.
It's sad. It's like we weren't. It's sad from a Blue Jays perspective. It's very sad. We really weren't expecting the Orioles to be good this year, but they're doing good vibes, fun stuff in Baltimore, and it fucking sucks. It's like the narrative that I feel like a lot of people around baseball would love to see is like the young, plunky, irrelevant Orioles coming up with all their rookies and catching the Jays, who were supposed to be the team.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's laid out there for the Orioles. They certainly have the chance to do it, and it would be awful. I haven't thought in my head too many times what it would look like if the Jays missed the playoffs this year. I've kind of just blocked it out. But now that we're into September and it's there and the Orioles are 2 games back and they play each other so many times and they're calling up all their prospects and they look like they're on fire. It's a bit of a worry. It's worrying.
Well, because it's only 2 games. If the Jays were 2 games out of a playoff spot, we'd be sitting here being like, God,
They're
we
right
have so
there.
much hope. They're right there. They can easily catch a team that's floundering.
That's where we were last year.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Two, 3 games behind Boston and New York.
I think it's natural to be concerned right now. You touched on it a little bit. Roster's expanding to 28. Bradley Zimmer is back, baby.
Fantastic. This is
It's fantastic.
It's honestly so funny how different September call-ups are now. Like, remember back, think about like 2014 for the Jays. It's like, oh fuck yeah, September call-up time. They're gonna add, like Dan Norris and Kendall Graveman and Aaron Sanchez, and everyone's coming up. It's gonna be sick. And now it's like, okay, you can add 2 more guys, and it's Bradley Zimmer's back again, and Casey Lawrence just in case someone shits their pants. It's not fun, but I understand.
We talked a lot of shit about Bradley Zimmer on the last few episodes of the pod. This is kind of like when your buddy breaks up with a girlfriend that you didn't like, and you're like, man, she sucked. Thank God you got out of this. Great play. Like, things are looking up. Then a week later, he's like, hey, we got back together. And you're like, ooh.
My question kind of is like, what role does Zimmer play on the team now?
How do you runner?
Yeah, that's fair.
Right. I think it'll be like he pinch runs for someone, and then a defensive, or the next time he comes up to bat, someone else just hits for him.
So you could do
it's a free spot.
Yeah, you can do Jackie Bradley Jr. as your starting center fielder, and then pinch hit for him later in the game. And then you still have a good center fielder to come in later. So you don't have to be worried about, oh shit, we can't pinch hit for Jackie Bradley because, well, then all of a sudden, who the fuck is your center fielder? Well, now Zimmer's back, so he can go be your center fielder. Okay.
Gives you an extra body, like if it's a game, for example, where you have Springer at DH, right? So Bradley, like you said, starting in center field late in the game, we want Alejandro Kirk to hit for him. Or maybe the way he's swinging the bat, you want Danny Jansen to hit for him. And then you can have Zimmer run, go to center field, and you're all good.
Extremely random thing, but James G on Twitter, a great follow, he was talking about where the Jays would most want to go on the road in the wild card. And he was pointing out how bad the vibes are when the Jays play in Cleveland, which I agree with. You think back to 2016, but there was also a terrible game last year where Tyler Chatwood came in and walked 4 straight guys. One of the guys he walked was Bradley Zimmer as a pinch hitter. So I'm thinking back to Cleveland last year using Zimmer as a pinch hitter and him drawing a walk, and it is inconceivable to me. That can't be real, but it was written down in Baseball Reference. And apparently it's real. That's fucked.
If the season ended today, the Jays would be going to Cleveland for a best of 3 series. I don't get good vibes out of Cleveland at all. I go back to the ALCS that one year. It's not a lot of fun.
In Cleveland also was when they had the walk-off inside the park home run, right? With Melvin Upton Jr. That was in 2016?
Yeah, maybe.
Something like that. That's
your memory's better at that stuff than mine.
Yeah, I remember all these fucked up things that happened.
If you're not going to Cleveland, the next most realistic option right now,
Tampa.
Yeah, is you end up having to go to Tampa.
Oh God,
I wouldn't mind going to Seattle. Going to Seattle would be fun.
That'd be fun
because Jays fans would take that place over.
It would be.
The Mariners would try so hard to prevent it, but the Jays fans would take it over.
Can you imagine you have to show your passport before the game and they ban Canadians from going, or
you're
something?
Like a Canadian citizen Mariners fan, and they're like, we're not letting you in.
Completely.
Jays
insane.
fans go in with Mariners gear on. Take it off.
Was the Tampa Bay Lightning had a thing like
There's
that?
There's a couple NHL teams that do that. They
wild.
ban you from buying tickets if you're out of state or out of their bubble. It's weird.
I wouldn't be. That would be interesting to see how Seattle would handle that. There's no way the Mariners would allow for a Blue Jays fan takeover in their first playoff series since 2001.
I would imagine
they have to do something, right?
They would have to do something.
But how do you stop that? Because Mariners fans could buy tickets and resell them, right?
Yeah, and that's how you'd have to get them if you're a Jays fan, because I would imagine Mariners playoff tickets are already on sale, right? They're probably doing the secure your tickets now if we host a wild card series, blah, blah, blah.
I wonder if BK bought 2022 Mariners season tickets and just didn't show up to a single game so we could perhaps buy Blue Jays playoff tickets in Seattle.
Seats right behind home plate that have just been vacant all year because BK's like, what if?
Well, that's what BK did for the Jays. He bought 2022 season tickets so that he could have a leg up to get home playoff tickets for the Blue Jays in 2022. So hopefully that works out for him.
I hope that works out for him too. Casey Lawrence is the other player getting called up right now. I think that gives you some insight into what they could potentially be looking to do on that Monday doubleheader against the Orioles, right? It seems natural that it'll be a Casey Lawrence start and a bullpen day.
Yeah, you'd think it'd be something like that. I think another piece of logic behind adding Lawrence to the roster right now is since you have that doubleheader on Monday in Baltimore coming up, following your 3-game series against the Pirates in Pittsburgh, is if one of the 3 starters going shits their pants, and the starters going, I think it's going to be Manoah, Stripling, and Barrios. So you have 3 pretty good bets there, but let's say on Sunday, Barrios does one of his weird Barrios starts and goes 2 innings. Then at least you can throw Casey Lawrence in to mop it up. Or from the other perspective, let's say the Jays are beating Pittsburgh 10-0 in the 5th inning, then you can just bring in Lawrence to mop the game up. That kind of thing, just so that you haven't used your big arms. Like the last thing you want is to have to use like Jimmy Garcia in the 7th inning of some bullshit game or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of what their contingency is there. They are able to add another player for the doubleheader. So maybe Merriweather or Zach Pop comes up, but there's also challenges there because I think Merriweather's out of options. And there's also the rule where you can only send a guy up and down so many times. So if someone's coming up, they're probably not going down. So I would imagine they want to kind of space these things out so that they don't run into a situation where they have to waive a guy or they can't option a guy, that kind of thing. There's a lot of complexities to this and we'll have to trust them.
All right. That series against Baltimore comes up after a series against Pittsburgh. Let's get set for that after a quick break. All right, it is a 3-game series coming up this weekend at the Dome against the Pittsburgh Pirates. Never mind, it's in Pittsburgh. I messed that up. My bad. Anyways, our friends at PointsBet Canada. Why are you looking at me like that? It is an away series. It's at the Pirates. Yeah. I just messed up.
Beautiful PNC Park in Pittsburgh.
It is a beautiful ballpark.
It'd be a great one to go to, but imagine making the drive from Toronto to Pittsburgh and they're like, Casey Lawrence spot start.
You like think you're getting Manoah. You're like, yeah, you're going to see Manoah on the road in September. They're like, oh no, it's Casey Lawrence. Sorry. Yeah, that wouldn't be ideal at all. The Jays are obviously going to be big favorites for this series coming up against Pittsburgh. That's because the Pirates are junk. They're 49-81 on the season. They are 2-8 in their last 10 games, and they have a minus 201 run differential.
That's so bad.
They're also terrible at home, 26-36. They're basically all around just not a good team.
Yeah, you can't name many guys on this roster off the top of your head. There's that new guy they call
O'Neal Cruz.
Who
it seems like every second day that guy's hitting a ball like 116 miles an hour, and they're like, oh, StatCast record. He's unreal.
He's an interesting player because he's got like this cannon for an arm. He threw this one bomb to first base from short, and I was like, oh geez, I wouldn't have wanted to catch that at all.
No,
that would suck. And then he hits that one home run that was just like a straight line. Or was it a long single and hit off the wall? Something insane like that.
Well, he's had a bunch. Like he hit the one home run, I think, last week into the stands, and it was like 115 miles an hour off the bat. And I watched the guy in the stands like try to catch it, and I was like, you should probably just not do that.
But he's also batting .202 with a .665 OPS, and this is the only player on the Pirates that anyone knows.
Yeah, like he clearly hasn't been productive. He's just been making the highlight reel a bunch of times.
Their best guy. Yeah. I mean, you look up and down this roster and like their best qualified OPS is Brian Reynolds at 795. Their best starter ERA was Jose Quintana, who's since been traded away to the St. Louis Cardinals. The next best guy after that is Ronzi Contreras, who has a 3.57 ERA through 12 starts.
Yeah. Not a lot of good stuff going on there.
I'm not very familiar with the Pittsburgh Pirates. Personally.
And I don't think anyone listening really would be either. But yeah, the Pirates, not a good team. They're going to face Alek Manoah in this series as well. And they are, I was going to rattle off some stats about like how they are against right-handed pitching and stuff, but like, it's just irrelevant because they're bad at everything. They're 28th in OPS against right-handed pitching. Like this should be, you win every game by 2 or 3 runs.
You should win every game handily. This should not be stressful. And the shitty thing about the Cubs series is even in the 2 wins, it was stressful.
Yeah.
So
basically, yeah, like I said, they're 2-8 in their last 10. They lost 6-1 to the Brewers, beat them 4-2, lost 7-5 to the Brewers. There's just no reason why the Jays should lose a baseball game here.
No.
Manoah, Stripling, Barrios for the Blue Jays. No one knows who's pitching for the Pirates because they might not have any major league pitchers. We don't know if they exist.
No, because they're also expanding their roster. So guys might be coming up. We just really don't know. It's the Pirates. We can assume it's someone who's probably not that good.
Yeah.
But Jays have a hard time sometimes with pitchers who are not very good.
Yeah.
So I'm unfortunately anxious ahead of this series. Unfortunately.
I am too. Like, just if they would have swept the Cubs, I would have been like, here we go. We're on the right track here. The other interesting thing about this series is that the Friday, Saturday games start at 6:35 Eastern.
So it's
4:35 Mountain Time for us in Edmonton.
It's weird.
But even if like 6:35 start times for Friday, Saturday is weird. And then it's a noon Eastern start on Sunday. So very odd start times this weekend.
Yeah, that's really bizarre, but Hopefully they make it worthwhile and they just kick the shit out of the Pirates, which is exactly what they need to do.
That is exactly what they need to do. Coombsy, you try your best to enjoy this. I say that to you every episode. And honestly, I'm not confident you're going to enjoy this.
I'm not confident you're going to enjoy it either.
Like, I think they could sweep them, but I think we're in for like 1 or 2 games that are just like not pretty. So.
Yeah. I have a weird feeling that it's going to follow the pattern of they win the first 2 games and we're like, and then they lose the 3rd game and it kind of kills the vibe. Like against Chicago, right? That's exactly what happened.
Coombsy's prediction is in. I'm going to say sweep, but there is a 1-run win mixed in there. Something really, really tight.
Some nasty shit where maybe they're losing in the top of the 9th and they come back.
And they win like 3-2 on a double the gap or some nonsense like that.
A home run from Bradley Zimmer.
Yes. No. That's going to do it for episode 107. Shout out to DoorDash. Shout out to our friends at PointsBet Canada. If you're in Ontario, check them out. Download the app. That's a wrap. We'll talk to you again after the series against Pittsburgh.
Best wishes.
Thanks for tuning in to Blue Jays Nation Radio, a member of the Nation Network of podcasts and delivered by DoorDash. Don't forget to like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts from to never miss an episode.